Hello everyone. In this video, we will be discussing about Chapter 2, Lesson 3, which is about using deductive reasoning to verify conjectures. Now, in the previous video, we have already learned what is inductive reasoning, and also we have learned how to um, relate inductive reasoning. Now, in this video, we will be using deductive reasoning to verify conjectures. So, first of all, to start with, let's see what is deductive reasoning. So in lesson 2.1, that's in the previous video, I have attached the link above in the iCard. So if you have not watched that video, or if you have any doubt in inductive reasoning, you could watch that video. So in that particular lesson, we learned that one counter example is enough to disprove a conjecture. So if you want to prove any conjecture is false, just one example is more than enough. But you want to prove it true, you definitely have to give at least two examples. But to prove a conjecture true, you must use deductive reasoning. So to prove a conjecture true, we have to give some examples to show that it is true. So that when we are telling that that statement is true using examples, we are doing deductive reasoning. Now, what is deductive reasoning? It is the process of using logic. So deductive reasoning goes more deeper than inductive reasoning. It uses logic to draw conclusion from given facts, definitions, and properties. So this is the difference between inductive and deductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning uses observation of patterns, or just it follows a pattern. So based on that pattern, we will decide this may be. But most of the time, inductive reasoning will not be true. The result of inductive reasoning will not be true because it's based on observation of patterns, because the patterns can change any time. But deductive, unlike that, deductive reasoning, it is the process of using logic. We need to think very deep when we are using deductive reasoning to verify the conjecture. So we will use facts, we will give definitions, we will use properties to give reasons when we are using deductive reasoning. So in deductive reasoning, if the given facts are true and you apply correct logic, then the conclusion must be true. So definitely for deductive reasoning, we need logic to get information. Okay, so we need to think that in all the ways. So now to think of give reasons for something, and if we are going deep into that and collecting facts and we are collecting information, that's called deductive reasoning because we are working on it using our logic, how to prove it right. So if the given facts are true and you apply the correct logic, then the conclusion must be true. The law of detachment is one valid form of deductive reasoning. Now, there are two forms of deductive reasoning. One is the law of detachment, and one is the law of syllogism. So, to start with, first let's see what's this law of detachment. Now, you know the difference between inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. Inductive is based on patterns and observations. Deductive is based on logical thinking, based on facts and definitions, and all these things are already established. So the law of detachment says if P then Q is a true statement and P is true, then Q is true. So you might be wondering what's this? Let me clearly explain what is this law of detachment. Law of detachment has the hypothesis and the conclusion. So if the hypothesis, then the conclusion is a true statement, and P, that is the hypothesis, is true, then definitely the conclusion is also going to be true. Let's see further how we can analyze this using this example. Determine if the conjecture is valid by the law of detachment. Now, what is the law of detachment saying? If the hypothesis is true, then the conclusion is going to be true. So, if a student passes his classes, the student is eligible to play sports. So, what is the hypothesis here? The hypothesis is if a student passes his classes. So, let's say this is P. P is if a student passes his classes. Then, what is the conclusion? Student is eligible to play sports. Okay, so this becomes Q. So, P to Q is P, then Q is if the student passes his classes, then he is eligible to play sports. Now, the situation given for you is Raymond passed his classes. Okay, so if Raymond passed his classes, what happens? Conjecture, that's conjecture they have given is Raymond is eligible to play sports. So, do you think this is a valid point from the law of detachment? So, they say Raymond passed his classes. So what will happen if Raymond passed his classes? What will happen? He will be eligible to play sports. So Raymond is eligible to play sports is valid by the law of detachment. Okay. Now let's go to another example. If you are tardy 3 times, that is, if you are late 3 times, you must go to detention. Okay, so Shia is in detention. So what is the hypothesis? Hypothesis is if you are tardy 3 times. So this is the hypothesis, which is called as P. You must go to detention is the conclusion. So this becomes U, which is the conclusion. Sorry, it becomes the Q, which is conclusion. So tardy 3 times, you go to detention, right? So the situation given for us is Shia is in detention. Now Shia is in detention. Conjecture is Shia was tardy at least 3 times. So they are saying because Shia is in detention now, that she was at least late for 3 times. Now, how can we say this is valid or invalid? Now, just think if a person is going for detention, that's they're going for punishment, is it only because that they are going to be late? It could be for any other reason too. Maybe they have not attended the school. There can be many reasons for going into detention, right? So it's not only that because she is late that she is there in the detention. No, maybe it's for some other reason. So according to that, now this is where you use logic for thinking. Maybe it's because of some other reason. So it's not because of Shia was tardy 3 times that she's in detention. Maybe it is for some other reason she is in detention. So this particular conjecture is an invalid one. Hopefully you have understood what is this connection between law of detachment and logic. Definitely you need to think all the possibilities wherever you could to prove that this conjecture is wrong or correct. If you think there are no more things which you could use to prove it's wrong, then we can say it's valid. For example, this one. So Raymond is eligible to play sports, means he is playing sports because of what? Is there any other reason they're leaving him to play sports? No, because they say if a student passes his class, so only if he passes, then he can play. But here the case is different. She can be in detention for some other reason. Here we cannot say that because we cannot say maybe he's playing sports because he like no, because the rule is if a student passes class, then he is eligible to play sports. Right. Now, another valid form of deductive reasoning is the law of syllogism. Now, as that was the law of detachment, that is, if P, then Q is true, then P is true, Q is true. Now, the law of syllogism says it allows you to draw conclusion from two conditional statements when the conclusion of one is the hypothesis of the other. Wait, I'll explain you what that means. See this. This is the law of syllogism. It works like a chain. That's all. So it says if P, that's the hypothesis, then Q. Okay. And Q, that is, there are two hypotheses now. So two conditional statements. So if Q, then R. So there are two situations. So then what happens is PR is a true state. So as I said, it works like a chain. So let's see, when we do the examples, it will be more clear what the law of syllogism is. Law of detachment works with only two things, but law of syllogism is working with three things. Determine if the conjecture is valid by the law of syllogism. Okay, so see here, if an animal is a mammal, then it has hair. So first the condition is if an animal is a mammal. Now I'm not writing all the words, I'm just writing the first letter of every condition. Okay, so if the animal is a mammal, then it has hair. If an animal is a dog, then it is a mammal. So if an animal is a dog, then it is a mammal. Fine. So here you can see that the mammal thing is getting repeated. So if P, then Q, then if Q, then R, right? Then it is a mammal. So if it's a dog, then it's a mammal. If an animal is a dog, then it has hair. So do you think if an animal is a dog, we could relate this way? Because here the P is repeated, right? Mammal, mammal is repeated. So that stays the same. So what's the new thing we found? It's this. So do you think if it was, let me clearly write this down. I think it's better I write it down in words so that it will be easy for you to understand. So let's start from the beginning. So if an animal is a mammal, so an animal is a mammal, then it has hair. Okay, so if an animal is a mammal, then it has hair. If an animal is a dog, then it is a mammal. So if an animal is a dog, animal is a dog, then it has hair. They said if an animal is a dog, then it's a mammal. Okay, so again, mammal has been connected here. Okay, so now what's the conjecture they have given you? If an animal is a dog, then it has hair. So if an animal is a dog, then it will have hair. So do you think this is a valid statement? If you would connect it anywhere, yes, it is a valid statement because anyhow it is going to result in this R statement. So this is PQR. So definitely that will go and get related to R. So which means if an animal is a dog, definitely that will have hair. But look at this part. If a number is divisible by 4, so a number is divisible by 4, then it is divisible by 2. Okay. If a number is even, if a number is even, then it is divisible by 2. So here it's a number, we are dividing by 4. And here, if it's a number is even, then we are dividing, then it is divisible by 2. Okay, now you could see that R has been got repeated 2 times. Okay, so the conjecture is if a number is divisible by 4, then it is even. So do you think we could relate this to this? It's not possible because if it's P, then Q, then R, then P should be equal to R. P should be R. So here you can see that R has been got repeated 2 times. So which means this is an invalid one. Well, it definitely needs a bit of practice and thinking to determine. So you can go through different situations. There are many situations given in your book or even in the internet. There are many examples defining these law of syllogism and law of detachment. So just try to do some questions because the more you do the questions, the more you will understand them. Okay, so this is about law of syllogism and that was about law of detachment. Right, so let's get into the practice workbook and check our answers. So I'll try my best to keep it clear and short. Let's see what is the result of that. Okay, so using deductive reasoning to verify conjectures. Tell whether each conclusion is a result of inductive reasoning or deductive reasoning. So you just have to say whether each of them is inductive reasoning or deductive. Right, so the United States Bureau collects data on earnings of American citizens using data for 3 years from 2001 to 2003. So they are collecting data So collecting data means they are collecting information on the earnings of American citizens. So they have collected data for 3 years. They're using the data and they concluded that the national average median income for a 4-person family was $43,527. So basically this question is telling you about data. And data means information which is based on patterns because every year they will see how much is it increasing, how much is it decreasing. So when I say increase and decrease, you could quickly guess it's kind of a pattern they're following. So based on that, they concluded the average median income for a 4-person family was 43,527. So is this inductive reasoning or deductive reasoning? This is purely inductive reasoning because they're using the data just to analyze or just to look over what are the changes over a 3-year period so that they can get the results. So this is inductive reasoning. They did not go deep into that and go to every household and ask how much are you earning. They didn't do that. They just took some information. They just observed the pattern which is following in all the 3 years, and then they concluded. So that's why it's inductive reasoning. Now, next one. A speeding ticket costs $40 plus $5 per mile per hour over the speed limit. So a speeding ticket, if you go over speed, that means you will get a $40 ticket plus $5 for how many miles you went. Okay, more you went. So Lynn mentions that to Frank that she was given a ticket for $75. Frank concludes that Lynn was driving 7 miles per hour over the speed limit. Now this one, Lynn just said that she got a ticket for $75. But what did Frank do? Quickly, he calculated everything because definitely we don't know what happened, which speed Lynn went, right? So quickly, what did Frank do? He calculated by himself. So he's calculating and using the mind. All these things are connected to deductive reasoning because he's using his logic to find out how much was the speed limit which Lynn went. So this is deductive reasoning because he's using his logic there to draw conclusions, to draw what happened, how much did she speed up, all these things. So it's not a pattern. He did not say, okay, she went the first hour this much, second hour she went, he didn't do that. But he calculated quickly and found out that she was driving 7 miles per hour over the speed limit. So that's why it became deductive reasoning. Right, so let's go to the next one. They determine if each conjecture is valid by law of detachment. So what was law of detachment? If P, then Q. So if P is true, then Q is true. Let's see. If the measure of angle ABC is equal to angle CBD. So there are two angles, angle ABC and angle CBD. Then BC bisects angle ABD. So you know what bisect means, right? It's dividing the angle in two equal parts. So what is bisect? BC. Now the another statement is BC bisects ABD. Okay, so this is just a given statement. Your real question starts from here. BC bisects ABD. So the conjecture. So we have to see whether this is valid. So do you think if BC is bisecting angle ABD, that means the measure of angle ABC is equal to angle CBD? Do you think this is a valid statement? No, it is an invalid statement. Why do we say it is invalid? Because the information given here is if angle ABC is equal to CBD, then BC bisects angle ABD, right? Now they did not mention here whether BC is they just said BC bisects angle ABD. Now this conjecture could be for another two angles also. They did not say in this particular triangle or in this particular angle it is bisected. So this is an invalid statement. So the next one, you will catch a catfish if you use stink bait. Stuart caught a catfish. So the condition given is you will catch a catfish if you use a stink bait. Stuart caught a catfish. Conjecture. Stuart used stink bait. So the thing given, the the information given is Stuart caught a catfish. Okay. Now, does that mean Stuart really used the stink bait only to catch the fish? No. Stuart could have used a net. Stuart could have used any other way to catch a catfish. So it's not necessary that he only used a stink bait. So again, this reason also becomes invalid. This conjecture becomes invalid. So this is how you need to think. You need to train your mind to think in all the different directions and all the possibilities. If all the possibilities are true, then the conjecture becomes true. Okay. Now next one. An obtuse triangle has two acute angles. You know how an obtuse triangle looks. An obtuse triangle has one obtuse angle. So it has an obtuse angle like that, and it has two acute angles. Triangle ABC is obtuse. So there is a triangle which is obtuse. Triangle ABC is obtuse. So does that mean triangle ABC will have two acute angles? Yes, this is a completely valid conjecture because if it is an obtuse triangle, then definitely it will have two acute angles. Now, instead of saying triangle ABC has two acute angles, if they would have given triangle has two acute angles, so that becomes invalid because we don't know which triangle they're talking about. So this is how you need to see whether each conjecture is valid by law of detachment. As I said, when you do more these kinds of logical thinking questions, you will understand what you need to do. So better you practice some more questions of the same kind. Next is determine if the conjecture is valid. Each conjecture is valid by the law of syllogism. So law of syllogism says if P then Q, if Q then R, then P is R. This is the law of syllogism, right? If P is then Q and Q then R, then P then R. So given, if the gossip said it, then it must be true. Okay, so if the gossip said it, you can say something is it. Okay? So if the gossip said something, then it must be true. If it is true, then somebody is in big trouble. So here we need to define P, we need to define Q, and we need to define R. So let's see. If the gossip said it, so the gossip said it is P. So what will happen if the gossip said it? It must be true. So Q. If it is true, so here it's Q again, okay, then somebody is in big trouble. So this is R. So conjecture is somebody is in big trouble because the gossip said it. So can we relate R to P? Yes, we can. So that means this is a valid conjecture from the law of syllogism. If you underline and then write P, Q, and all these things, then it becomes easy for us to relate one over the other. Okay, next one. No human is immortal. Immortal means not dying. So no human is immortal. So Fido the dog is not a human. So no human is immortal is P. Fido the dog is not human. So there is something missing here, isn't it? So they did not give no human is immortal. What will happen if no human is immortal? They did not give that. Again, they skip to another statement saying Fido the dog is not a human. So we do not have a Q here. So conjectures, Fido the dog is immortal. This doesn't make any sense because the Q is missing. So this is an invalid statement. Well, even if you don't find the Q, Fido the dog is immortal, any dog will stay without dying is impossible. So it's an invalid conjecture. So we need to again think logically too. Even if we do not find the PQR, look at the conjecture. Fido the dog can live without dying is impossible. So it's invalid. Okay, so the next one. The radio is distracting me when I am studying. So what is happening? Radio is distracting when some person is studying. If it is 7:30 p.m. on a weeknight, so this is the next statement, 7:30 p.m. on a weeknight, I am studying. So this is P, this is Q, and this is R. So you can see that Q is repeated here, right? Like Q is like a common term for both of the conjectures, both of the hypothesis or conclusion. So the radio is distracting. What happens when he's studying? The radio is distracting. So if it is 7:30 p.m. on a weeknight, some person is studying. Conjecture, if it is 7:30 p.m. on a weeknight, the radio is distracting. So do you think we could relate R to P? Yes, we can. So that means this is a valid conjecture. It's like if you identify which is P, which is Q, which is R, and if you can relate R to P, then that means the conjecture is going to be valid. But then you need to think logically too. So let's go on to find a conclusion from the given information. Okay, so now let's read it carefully and then let's find out what's the conclusion. If two segments intersect, then they are not parallel. So definitely if two segments are intersecting, means you know what is intersecting, means they're crossing each other. So definitely they are not parallel because parallel lines, they never meet each other. They keep traveling in the same direction, but they do never touch each other. If two segments are not parallel, they could be perpendicular. So see the conditions here. If two segments intersect, then they are not parallel. If two segments are not parallel, then they could be perpendicular. So EF and MN intersect. So what can we derive from this conclusion here? EF and MN are intersecting. So that means, are they parallel? No. If they're intersecting, they're not parallel. So we cannot give the conclusion as they are parallel. So they said if two segments are not parallel, that means they're intersecting, then they could be perpendicular, which means that is segment EF and MN could be perpendicular. If you keep reading the question 3-4 times the same thing, you will definitely, by yourself, you will get to say what is the conclusion. That's how your brain trains. So if you keep repeating, definitely you will understand. Like if you ask the question, so what if M and MN intersects? They could be perpendicular. Okay. So the next one. When you are relaxed, your blood pressure is relatively low. When you are relaxed, your blood pressure is low. If you are sailing, you are relaxed. So if there is a connection between each of them, right? If you are relaxed, your blood pressure is low, and when you're sailing, you are relaxed. So Becky is sailing. So what is the conclusion we can derive from this? Becky's blood pressure is relatively low. So that's the conclusion. Becky's blood pressure is relatively low because she's sailing, and because of sailing, what happens? You are relaxed, and because relaxing, what will happen? Her blood pressure will be relatively low. So it's like a series of questioning. You need to question each other. If Becky is sailing, so what? She's relaxed. If she's relaxed, so what? Her blood pressure is relatively low. Same condition here. If they intersect, what will happen? They are not parallel. And if they are not parallel, what will happen? They could be perpendicular. This is how you derive conclusions from the given information. So that was all for this video. Hopefully you have understood the lesson, and definitely practice will make you perfect, and logical thinking will make you perfect, I could say, according to this lesson. So until we meet again in another video, keep practicing, keep thinking logically so that you could give good reasons when you are somewhere in big trouble. You could use deductive reasoning to escape, right? So till if you've understood and if you've got the answers right, do like this video and let me comment and let me know whether you got the answers correct or not. So till we meet again, keep practicing.